Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. GT, I'll start with you. I believe the Olympics may have broke the internet for athleteps.com. You guys, there was to say there was a lot of orders is a massive understatement, huh?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that like the Olympic movement always does a really good job because it spotlights a lot of the stuff that we do. So, it's been a really good, I don't even know, 3 weeks since it got over. So, been crazy busy. Love it. It's really good for the company, good for the brand. So excited about all that.
Congrats to you and Shane. Mark, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good.
Good. Is there anything new going on in Iowa that we should know about?
Not that I know of, David. I haven't heard anything lately. Got a few new guys on the team. A few have left.
Let's start with college. So I don't think we touched on this last week, but AJ Ferrari commits to Cal State Bakersfield. It was interesting. It felt like the whole time it was them or Northern Colorado. I don't know where else he visited, but I would imagine if he visited anywhere else, we would have seen it on social media, given his propensity for doing so. It's a big get for Bakersfield. Obviously, anytime you get a guy that won nationals, that's still got a truckload of eligibility left, he'll bring a ton of notoriety to the program. And I think the biggest question I have is, who does he work out with? Right? Like, big guys always struggle to have good guys to work out with. And also, the schedule wise and all that other stuff. And just, obviously he's had, probably the fairest way to say it is, he's had some problems follow him. And, that's, I don't feel like in any way we're judging anything, but clearly it's not been the smoothest of rides for him. So, Mark, I'll start with you. Anytime you pick up a guy that scored 22 points at the Nationals, that's significant, right?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. And about, you had said something about troubles that followed him. I think he's done a better job of trying to control his emotions. I think he did a pretty good job at Iowa until it got heated, and that's the problem with emotions. If you get in a situation where it gets heated and you're used to acting out, he acted out. And so that's something I think coaches and fans are going to watch for the next year while he's at California to see how he does, because there's going to be a time he gets into somebody, and how is he going to deal with it? And that's where he has an issue sometimes. And, he's been forgiven. People want to watch him wrestle. He's entertaining. He's branded himself unbelievable. Compared to most people, because everybody knows who he is. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, he's a contender, no doubt.
GT, to Mark's point, we actually know how much the guy deadlifts, which says something about his ability to brand himself.
665.
That's exactly right. So that's a fact. I guess the interesting thing for me is we saw him win nationals relatively easily, beat Bonacorsi, who then won nationals the next year, was undefeated, was probably one of the least respected undefeated national champions we ever have. I think everybody picked against him all year. But then we also saw him win/lose against Zach Glazer in Soldier Salute. And Glazer, while he had a really, really solid regular season, went 1-2 at nationals. So what version of Ferrari do you think we see this year?
Well, I think for most of the kids he had a lot of success back in 2021.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track. Yes.
So, I had a little brief glimpse of, what AJ could do. And once again, I don't know, if he was in shape, how much he was training when he wrestled Glazer. But also Glazer was, Big Ten finalist. Maybe didn't have the NCAA that he wanted to, but Glazer had a real sneaky good season. Just didn't end it kind of how the season went, right? So some really big wins for Glazier. And I think also just for AJ's sake, and I don't know him personally, I don't know anything about him. I'm always on the side of a redemption story than not. So I hope that, the new place, new location, new vibe, new coaching staff, new everything for him pays dividends for him. Because I always like to see kids kind of have a good little comeback story or a redemption story for himself. So if that comes to fruition, congratulations. If not, hey man, try to figure it out.
Yeah, for full disclosure for me, I know the Ferrari family at least a little bit, in the sense that they've wrestled in Angelo wrestled in Border Brawl. I worked with his dad on that. I was working with his dad on getting Angelo against Zach Ryder this year. Didn't pan out. I know AJ, at least I've done an interview with him. I set up the interview with him. And GT, I'm like, and I don't, when I say I'm like you, I don't mean Mark isn't. I think we're all, you verbalize. I think we're all on the side of a redemption story. Okay. So Mark, I don't mean to say you aren't, because I know you are. I don't think you can coach JUCO and not be on the side of a redemption story, frankly.
No, you can't.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure I framed that correctly. I like the Ferraris. They're cool to talk to. They're just straightforward dudes. Right? The guys, like, if your thing is to drink a beer, if your thing is to go shoot pool, whatever your thing is, they'd be fun to do it with. I hope it works out. I mean, I think those guys that are higher profile guys, they bring eyeballs to the sport. And as long as they're doing it for the right reason, then I think we want those guys in the sport. Same thing for women, but we're talking about men right now, obviously. So it's, I also know Luke Smith, and I'm rooting for him. So I hope this is something where, potentially this could be really good for the state of California wrestling too. So I think the main subject that's probably going to take the most time today for us is what's going on in Iowa. So Iowa loses Ferrari. Our understanding is that that was an administrative decision, not a coaching staff decision, but has not been vetted. And then they had Glazer, and then they go get Stephen Buchanan. And then they go get Ja'Cory Teamer. There's so many layers to this. And then as a result of that, I mean, this is directly correlated, same weight class. Siebrecht and Glazer leave and go to South Dakota State. So I don't know how much time you guys spend like thinking about what you're going to say on this podcast, but I try to be consistent, even if people don't agree with my position, which is fine. I'm a capitalist. I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I believe people should get what they're worth. I believe the market should dictate what you're worth. So I can't say I'm a capitalist and be mad at what is going on. But what I will say is this, the situation is really convoluted, like how it happens. Like, there's a young man I know that wanted to go into the portal, and he had signed a contract with a university that was front loaded. They didn't have the money to afford it after the front load went away. And now, because he missed the portal deadline, he has to have a third party talk to coaches. And I know this is a rule because I've been helping this young man and another person has. So the way it works is Grant's the youngest of the three of us. So if he's in the portal and he and I are friends from high school, or I coached him when he was in high school, and he wants to go to, I'll say, St. Louis University. I have to call the St. Louis University coach. I have to find out what they would offer Grant. Grant has to enroll on his own. Now, supposedly now these schools can pay for the enrollment fee. That's TBD. But Grant has to enroll on his own. He has to show up at the wrestling room. He has to say, I want to try out for the team. And then he has to hope that the coach keeps his promise. And I want to talk about this subject first, and then we'll talk about what's going on with those specific guys we named up front. To me, that doesn't seem fair to the kid. Okay. And this is just my opinion. It's not the opinion of USA Wrestling. It's not the opinion of Grant or Mark, and we'll get their opinions. Like, if the kids want to leave, you know, I guess it's since it's fair. Like, hey, you missed the window. You missed the portal. This just feels like the Wild West to me. Like, there's no rules. There's like, and I talked to a coach that said, well, he needs a release. And then the week later, he doesn't need a release. And then another coach say, if I wrote a release, I'd lose my job because that's antiquated and it would look like, you know, we're tampering by writing a release letter. Like, these coaches who are paid a lot of money to know this don't know, or they're all lying. It's one of the two. And I know the guys, I don't think they're lying. So, Grant, I'll start with you. You're in the college coaching world two ways. One, as a coach. Two, a lot of these schools are schools you work with. I don't even know what I'm asking you exactly. I'll ask you this. What do you think about the state of transfer rules for college wrestling right now?
Well, I think I want to be very clear about the programs that have the ability to monetize the portal or monetize transferring is I think it's a very small list. And this is just my own personal opinion, because I think that, like, I don't see a lot of programs just out here touting that they have millions and millions of dollars in order to go and recruit or pay athletes to come to their school that's already been a proven commodity at another school. I think there's more people that are falling into like the normal traditional recruiting things where it's like, hey, this kid's in the portal, like, let's see if he wants to come to school here and like have an opportunity to compete, or, you know, all of these other things that basically could occur. I think what makes it so, I would say, volatile is it like the discrepancy between the people that have the money to be able to utilize this as an option and the people that don't. And then I think also the people that are like available in order to even receive that money. I think that, like, Mark, if you're like I would say a mid to low All-American, like 5th through 8th, but you're at a team that maybe doesn't have the ability to win a team title, and then all of a sudden somebody that comes that's looking for your specific weight class, and you fall into a very small hole that could help them win a team title. You know, I think that's just being a smart coach and going out and getting somebody that could be helpful for you to win a team title. Now, I don't know about like tampering. I don't know about like enrollment. I don't know about all of the, because I'm not an NCAA coach, so I don't, there's a different set of rules for all this stuff, but it seems to me that it's more of the Wild West than it is governed. And if you're not, and I think that's the whole thing with NIL and everything like that, that like the governance is like still being sorted out. And then also the transfer portal is something that is, it's available, it's still live, it's active, but then there's this other aspect that's not governed as probably closely. Now, once again, that I could be completely uneducated on the subject when it comes to what the governance actually is, but I feel like it's very much the Wild West, and we might not even like get to the bottom of certain situations that we might not even know about that are like behind closed doors.
Mark,
that's a very long-winded answer to.
Well, it took me 4 minutes to ask you a question, so I think, you know, like, but I think it's important to set it up. Like, one of the things I love about this podcast is, I think we don't always agree. I think as human beings, in terms of character, I trust you guys. I love you guys. Like, I know whatever you'd say about me to my face, you'd say behind my back. But that doesn't mean we agree on all these topics in wrestling or life or politics or 100 different things. And that's okay. That's good. I mean, a lot of these talk shows are set up for people to argue. And I don't know that we argue. I think we disagree. I think when Mark and I go crazy, Grant laughs. But, but this is fascinating to me because we have three different viewpoints, right? Like, GT, you may have the most unique viewpoint of anybody doing a podcast with your job at Nike, because you hear and see things. And, like when the Nike colorways came out for the Olympics, I'm not going to ask you how long you knew about that, but I'm guessing you knew about it at least before you got on the plane. And
Yep.
You and I talk about a lot of stuff. And even if I'd ask you, you'd have been like, I can't tell you that, bro. That's in the vault. And that's good. That's the way it should be. That's your job. And I don't need to know that. I'm just being nosy. Like, it's not going to change my life. But your perspective being on the business side of it, Mark's perspective on it, on having brought in 1,000 kids and sent out 1,000 kids up to the next level. Me having helped my dad do that, and then been doing this podcast longer than you guys have, and having this network of coaches that's been built through Border Brawl and Hall of Fame duels and these other things. I think we all have a different lens, to quote Stephen Covey, on the thing. So that's why I'm genuinely interested. That's like a subject like this. If I would talk to Mark during the week, I'm like, I don't want you to tell me what you think right now, because I want to react live on the air. So Mark, you're an Iowa fan. Well, all right, we'll go to the Iowa part second. What do you think about what's going on in the rules of recruiting right now?
I don't like it. I never have liked it. I said that from day one. I think it's going to hurt the sport. I think it's going to hurt all collegiate athletics. The morale in the rooms must be devastating, because we've all coached. We know what it's like to build a program to where you try to be a family. You are close with these kids. You do everything you can to help them become successful citizens, athletes, people on campus. You try to lead by example. You do the right things, good things are going to happen to you. This is completely devastating to programs like that, in my opinion. You bring in a team of 30 kids and you have a bond with them, and they become a family to you. And all of a sudden, it's like selling your children. I'm going to go get another child that's a little bit better than you. You can do whatever you want. That to me is how it feels. I'm not saying that's how it is, but that's how it feels. I understand these coaches are under a lot of pressure to win, but you can win in a lot of different ways, David. It's not just about being at the top of the podium. I've had kids that placed at the national tournament that I've been so proud of, because when they came into the program, they weren't even close to being an All-American. So they got better. And that, you can be just as proud of that as a kid that came in with a lot of talent and standing at the top of the podium.
I would guess that all three of us, if you name the 5 guys that you had a hand in coaching that you are the proudest of, and I'd say guys because we all coached men's wrestling. Okay, we didn't have the privilege of coaching women's wrestling at that level. Would all pick at least 3 kids that were not on the same list of the 5 best wrestlers they ever coached. Okay? But I think the difference is this, Mark. Like, if you're Tom and Terry, if you're David Taylor, if you're Kale, if you're Mike Gray, if you're Zeke, any of these coaches, Mark Manning.
Matt.
Yes. Your salary's public, except in the case of Mike Gray. And B, you're not paid to take a kid that was 4th at state and turn him into the 8th place guy or round of 12 his senior year. People are not donating money for that. You're not paid for feel-good stories. You're paid to win. You're paid for team trophies, and you're paid to wrestle on Saturday night. And that's what all this money is about. What's crazy to me is like when people say, well, there's no ROI on this, right? Like you go back to Suriano and you mentioned Bourmet, like how much money Michigan paid for him. And like, well, there's no way they could have made that selling t-shirts. Like that wasn't the point. Somebody with the big checking account wanted Michigan to win the Big 10s, in the NCAAs, and they knew adding Suriano would make it more likely. And they've got extra money. Okay? They have discretionary funds. There's a word on the street for that that's a lot different than discretionary funds, but that's what they have. So they can spend it however they want as long as it's legal. And this is legal. So, I mean, GT Mark and I have this saying where we say, look, if you don't like something, don't complain about it unless you have a solution. So I was trying to think of a solution. And then I was like, well, okay, you can't transfer out if you started last year. Okay, because then I thought, well, that would just give, like if Mark's the starter and you and me are the backups, like, okay, well, we can leave, right? Like we're not going, it's not going anywhere. And then I'm like, well, that would absolutely hose Zach Glazer, right? Like, I mean, he started the whole year. I think he wrestled every duel. He won them the Nebraska duel. I think, like he was the underdog and won that match, Big 10 runner up. So my problem is I don't know the solution. I mean, the toothpaste is out of the tube. I was texting with the D1 coach this morning. Like, I don't know how they fix it. And I'm not sure that when I say fix it, I want these kids to get what they're worth. So we get specifically into what's going on at Iowa. So Teamer and Buchanan come in. So Arizona State has lost Parco and Teamer to Iowa. Arizona State had a trophy team on April 1. Okay, if you take Figueroa, Parco, Teamer, Schultz, Figueroa champ, Parco 3 or 4 time All-American, depending on how you count All-American years and all that stuff. Teamer, runner-up. Okay? And the guy that beat him moved up. Schultz, multiple-time All-American, former finalist. If I set the over-under for those 4 guys at 50 points, I think we'd all take the over. And then they have some other guys that could do some damage. And we saw last year 70 points will get you a trophy. Well, they're not getting a trophy now. I mean, I'm sure in the room they're saying that, but let's put it this way. The odds of them getting a trophy are way longer now. And Mark, you mentioned culture. Grant at Grandview, I want to use it's championship lifestyle. That's the phrase you guys use. Is that correct?
Yep.
And that is a constant. Like it's like Tiger style at Mizzou. Like this is a thing. And I don't want to speak for Nick Mitchell, but I believe if you don't fit into that culture, you can go kick rocks. Like it doesn't mean he won't work with you and help you, but at the end of the day, if you don't want to follow certain basic tenets, you're probably not going to stay in that program forever. Well, I don't know how you build culture when it's just a bunch of guys that come in for 9 months.
Well, I think, and once again, I'm not a Division I coach, so I don't want to pass myself off as anything other than the part-time volunteer assistant at an NAI level college. So, like, let's make sure that like we all place apples to apples because the livelihood of these guys as Division I coaches, like once again, their job is to continue to develop men, win programs, win duels, win nationals. I mean, once again, that's why you get into coaching to be able to do that. There is an aspect of mentorship of young men and women to be able to make them better people. I think if you don't go out and do what kind of some of these programs are doing with the offering of different contracts and things of that nature to kids is, well, at Arizona State, I'll use them as an example, and I won't necessarily speak for Thompson, Pritz, Molinaro, and Zeke, but hey, man, your excuses are gone. Like, Parco's gone, Teamer's gone. Like, it's your spot now. Like, now you're responsible to be the guy, right? So, once again, like, it's how you phrase it to your kids, especially in that scenario where somebody leaves, or if, on the inverse, if you have somebody coming in. Now, once again, we're all coaches. If we have the opportunity to bring in somebody that's really good, we're doing that. Now, once again,
that's the other side of the coin, right? Go ahead.
So it's like, like, once again, we're all 3 coaches. And once again, there's tons of coaches that watch this pod. So we're not suggesting that, like, hey, go get somebody that's really good and bring them onto your team. But you also have to make sure that, like, hey, that's our job, is to get you the best practice partners, the best people, the best situation. That's why the RTCs exist within your rooms. That's why we bring in people to do this. And once again, who's to say that if we bring somebody in, that they're automatically the guy? Yeah, maybe because they're on full scholarship, maybe they're getting $17 million to be the guy. Still a wrestling match. If you go beat them, that's, like, you're only going to have so many opportunities to beat them. But, like, if you do, then you're the guy, right? So that's the beauty of wrestling too. So I think it depends on if you're the person that's getting somebody or the person that got left, on, like, what your strategy for your team is in order to rally the troops on whatever it is. So that is up to the coaching staffs. And I think that's also part of when we get to be commentators of such programs. Like, I can say whatever I want to about Arizona State and or Iowa, but I'm not in their camp, right? So I don't know what Tom and Terry are saying. I don't know what Zeke is saying to his guys, but I think we can speculate to say, if Mark, David, and Grant were on staff, what would we say?
What's fascinating about that, Mark, then I'll come to you, is the point about if a kid wants to come or if a kid becomes available, that's absolutely true, right? Like, you're actively coaching in NAI. I don't want to put anybody's name on the street, but Division I champion X, something happens. Let's just say something that is not bad. This person has a sick member of their family that lives in Des Moines, Iowa, and they would rather not be a Division I wrestler and be near that person every day than they would be a Division I wrestler and be some other part of the country. Okay, so there's no character flaw, there's no nothing. Okay, and economically they can make it work to come to Grandview. You got to take them. I mean, because there's no, well, David got in trouble with the law, or Mark had suspect grades, or anything. It's no, this is a situation. And, this person's grandma is on their deathbed and that was the person that raised them and they want to be there. And that doesn't take into account at all who you have at that weight class. I get in Grandview, 12 guys can go. Okay, but let's just take that part out of it for a second. So if this person comes in, it's tough because that does affect culture, right? And every school that's any good at all is going to have transfers. Oklahoma State's going to start 5 transfers this year. Iowa's going to start 5 transfers this year. Those two are like the 2 bluest of bloods programs. When you talk about historical, obviously Penn State's the dynasty right now. And we could count, I think they have 2, but I could be, 3. Kirkley never wrestled for anybody, but he counts as a transfer. So, Mark, if you were the czar of wrestling, how do you change this?
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
I would have never implemented the transfer, the pay for play in the first place, but that
had to though. That was the contract they lost with NIL. That
you asked me what I would do. I mean, that's what I would do. But
you can't go back
yeah.
Okay. I asked you a question, but you don't have a time machine. So you can't say I would never, like, that's done. What would you do now? And if the answer is I don't know, that's fair because I don't know either. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I don't know. But to go with what Grant said, coaches are brought in to build a culture, to build, something you're going to be remembered by, and you want your kids to be remembered by. I have a hard time here, David, and I'm an Iowa fan, and I'm an Iowa State fan, and I'm a UNI fan. I like all the wrestling schools in the state of Iowa, and I follow them all. And I'm proud when they do well, and I'm disappointed if they don't. But if you bring in a senior for one semester to take out another senior because you think you can go 2 notches higher on the podium, I have a hard time with it. I think building that culture of somebody that's been in your room for 5 or 6 years to bring in somebody that's never been in your room just to stay in, a high place ranking because you feel your job's in jeopardy. I just don't like it. And I'm not saying I don't know what to do about it. I don't like it.
I think the other interesting part of this culture is the economics, right? So if you bring in Teamer and Buchanan, and the numbers are supposedly X, okay?
Well, they are. Let's not kid. They're 40 points. Both of them are ranked number one.
No, the dollars. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Dollars. I'm super comfortable talking about NCAA math points.
Yeah.
Probably the most comfortable person in America. So I'm talking about the dollars. If the dollars are what they supposedly are, then you go, well, what's Ayala worth? Right? Because Buchanan didn't make the finals. Now he lost to an Olympic bronze medalist and took third. Okay. Ayala took second at a weight where 19 guys could have won the weight, but he still made the finals, and he made the finals in a black singlet. Okay. Teamer made the finals in a different singlet. Okay. And then you go, okay, well, if this guy took second and he's worth this much, and I took fourth, what am I worth? Like, is it a straight scale? Like, hey, you're worth $25,000 a team point? Because that doesn't seem right. Because if you can score 2 team points, I don't think you're worth 50, right? It's like when you can score 20, like you said, Mark. Okay, and for people that don't do the math, 16 points for second place plus bonus. 16 includes advancement and placing. So is it just a straight scale? What if you're a guy with 2 million Instagram followers and that helps the program somehow? There's a quantitative way to measure that. Okay, like this goes all the way back to the podcast before I was working with you guys, when Sarah Hildebrandt was getting paid less to be on a flow event than Pat Downey, and it was because of followers. It wasn't because of track record. It wasn't because of resume. I just know this. There's certain schools that cannot get in this arms race, right? Like if you pay person X, now person Y on your team's like, well, I got to get the same or more. I feel like what's going on is you're re-recruiting your team all the time. Okay, like I will tell you a personal anecdote that I know for sure happened because I was in the conversation. John Messenbrink, Mitchell's dad, wrestled for my dad at Merrimack when I was in high school. He was a freshman or sophomore at Merrimack when I was a senior in high school. I can't remember. We're very close in age. And I used to work out with him every chance I could. And I saw him Mitchell's senior year in Vegas, GT at whatever the tournament is in that auxiliary gym, you know what I'm talking about. But he was wrestling in that. It might have been, I don't think it was World Team, it might have been Western Regionals, I don't know. But he had a pretty good career in high school, but he's a definition of a late bloomer. And he had signed a CalBAP. And I'm like, your kid's going to go in the portal. And he looked at me and he's like offended. I go, it's a compliment. He works so hard and he's so good. He's not going to be happy there. And I guess that sounds like a slight to CalBAP, and I apologize, but there's certain people that are certain levels, and that dude wants to be an Olympic champion. And that path doesn't seem as likely there as somewhere else. He's in the portal. I saw his dad GT, like the same time I saw you in Iowa for the Penn State weekend, we were staying in the same hotel. I ended up having breakfast together, and he was like, yeah, you saw that coming, huh? And I'm like, some things are not that hard to figure out, especially if you're not emotional about the people involved. So this is the problem, though. Kids get better, and they want to go to certain situations. And you see this in college football all the time, right? Like the coach from Washington becomes the coach at Alabama. And then there's this whole other dynamic that we see in the pros every day, and we don't see it in college as much, at least on paper. But what happens when the athlete's getting paid more than the coach? Like, it's tough. It's tough from an authoritative standpoint. So let's talk about what this does for Iowa. So here's their lineup as far as I can tell. Probably Joey Cruz or Ibarra at 25, Drake at 33, Schriever or Peterson at 41, Parco 49, Teamer 57, Caliendo 65, some combination of Nelson, Gabe, PK 74, 84, Buchanan, 97, Heater heavyweight. So I'll tell you what I think. I think they have a for sure All-American at 25, a for sure All-American at 49, a for sure All-American at 57, for sure All-American at 65. I think they probably have an All-American at 74 and 84 somehow out of that, 97 and maybe heavy. So they have like 7.5 All-Americans. They'll be ranked third or fourth at 33, I think. They'll be ranked top 5 at 49. They'll be ranked number 1 at 57. They'll be ranked number 2 at 65. Wherever Nelson is, he'll be ranked top 4. Gabe will be top 8. Buchanan will be 1. Heater will probably be 10.
11. Yeah.
10, give or take. I think they're the number 2 team now. So, Mark, you do this nerd math more than GT does. Am I wrong? Because I don't know who can beat them.
No, I think they're going to be projected to be right around 110 points. I think Penn State's projected right at about 130, 135. The third place team is projected to be right around 70. There's a big jump.
Are you looking at certain rankings for that?
I've already looked at a bunch of different rankings.
Okay.
But they haven't put all the stuff in yet, David, but you can do the math yourself. I think Iowa takes like a 30-some point jump, even with Drake Ayala going up to 33.
Here's Mark, to interrupt you. 4 minutes ago, Flo came out with team rankings. Penn State 124, Iowa 103.5, Oklahoma State 59, Nebraska 57, Ohio State 50. So Arizona State's tied for 10th with 35. If you put those two guys back in the lineup, they're tied for third, give or take.
So basically what I was trying to get to is there's a big gap between first and second. There's even a bigger gap between second and third. So I think that puts them square where, they can compete. I'm not sure they can take Penn State down. I think most people think Penn State could win it. Doesn't matter. They're just that good. So, but it's going to make it more interesting, I think, for sure.
Well, they're not going to win by 100 points this year. In GT last year, we won that bet where they won by exactly 100 points. So, I mean, when you talk about Iowa's lineup, like if Drake made the finals, you wouldn't be shocked. If Parco made the finals, it's a mild shock. If Teamer makes the finals, not a shock. If Caliendo makes the finals, not a shock. If Nelson makes the finals, like he's ranked behind Plot, but as Mark points out, he's never lost the Plot. Okay, so if he made the finals against Kekheisen, you wouldn't be shocked. Buchanan's ranked number 1, so if he made the finals, you wouldn't be shocked. I mean, that's like 5 guys I think we've said there that if they made the finals, you're like, not that big of a surprise.
Well, I would be, but hang on, just so we clarify, I would be shocked if Brands made the finals at 84 because you got Strachey and you got Kekheisen. And I'm not sure he's ever beaten or even wrestled, Kekheisen. So, but I think it's going to be a tall path.
But if he goes 74, I mean, do you think he beats? Okay, I don't want to get into Keegan, Levi, Rocco Welsh. Let's put it this way: Brands is top 4 either one of those ways.
Yes.
Okay, so 33 possible final, 49's a half, 57 solid, 65 solid, 74, 84 is a half, 97 solid. So you have 4 and 2 halves. Plus you got heavyweight. I mean, GT, I think most people think Keeter's probably going to place. He commits a year to wrestling. So, I mean, the other thing that's crazy about this is if you hear what the payroll for that team is, it's like, if the numbers are even close to accurate, it's over 2 and might be $3 million. So bake sales and selling Nike t-shirts are out the window. So.
Well, I think the other thing that, especially for this year, and quote me if I'm wrong, guys, this is the last year of COVID seniors, correct? Like, this is the last opportunity for like Starachi to come back for his 5th tournament, correct?
I feel like that's right. And the only reason I say that is Keegan wrestled as a true freshman because there was nothing to lose, because it was a free roll. But maybe there's one more year after that because he never redshirted. So you could have a guy that did the free roll, then redshirted, then had 4 more years. But it's very unlikely. I'd say 90% of them are gone. So go ahead.
Well, I think with this, also kind of the proven commodity transfer portal thing is, you're getting a guy that's got an extra year, and once again, college wrestling's brutal, but like, if you got the ability to have somebody that's a proven talent that's been able to do really well, like, I think you can go after those type of guys. But I also think that, like, it gives those guys an extra incentive to stick around rather than going on and leaving college, right? So I think it's interesting from the standpoint that we're talking about team points and, with guys that have that extra year as well. Because I think one of the things, and I think that has been documented pretty well, is that like Penn State's success with those guys sticking around and coming back for those additional years has paid dividends for, once again, having Carter Starachi around for 5 years, it's a pretty good move. Having Brooks around for that extended amount of time, having Greg Kirkfleet around for that extended amount of time.
Yeah.
And once again, if you're already pretty good, like, I'd much rather have you back than not have you back, right? So it's a proven commodity versus, the next guy up, right? So not that the next guy up can't do it. It's just, I don't think there's a lot of people that have that level of depth to just have all Americans on the bench all the time.
Right. Well, and looking at those team races, like Arizona State went from 4th to 10th. And then, like, imagine if you take a kid, like one kid off a team and move them. So, like, take Iowa and, take Ayala off of Iowa and put him on Oklahoma State. They're probably even now, point-wise. It's about, maybe not quite, but it's like a 40-point difference, plus 16, minus 16. Now you're within sort of the delta margin of error kind of stuff. All right. Let's go to Penn State news. Jason Nolf retires. Zane Rutherford becomes a Nittany Lion Wrestling Club coach. Both of these are fascinating to me. Zane had a Wall Street job and then won the trials, qualified the weight, wrestled the Olympics, got a concussion. To be full disclosure, we had Zane in for a clinic. Couldn't have been a nicer guy. And Nolf seems like a really nice guy. And GT, I'm sure you know him at some level, just being involved with the Penn State program. He loves grappling and this other stuff. I don't know if MMA is in his future, but he did the ADCCs, the Craig Jones Invitational, stuff like that. His creativity, both those guys are legacies, both 3-time NCAA champs. Zane's an Olympian. I don't know if Nolf ever won the Hodge. I know Zane did. I think Zane did. But just like absolute crusher legends in the sport. So GT, I asked you this off air. He becomes an additional coach of Nittany Lion. Jake Varner stays, correct? So it's just one more guy in the corner. And so, like, Penn State's really kind of reloaded that coaching staff besides Kale, Cody, Casey. They now have Nick Lee. They now have Zane Rutherford, and they keep Varner. And I'm guessing Nolf may stick around. And, Bo Nickel seems to be sticking around there too. So the stronger up there. I mean, there's a whole podcast to be done about the passing of an era of all these guys that were so great for so long in USA Wrestling that may be done now, or some for sure done now, but like the Jaden's being done, the David Taylor's being done, the Thomas Gilman's being done, Burrow's probably not going to 28, things like that, and all these trophies that have been won, or medals, that have been won, and team trophies as a result of it. So either one, Mark, thoughts on those two guys on where they're headed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad for Zane. Obviously, I thought Nick Lee taking the coaching position, 2 months ago, were great gets for Penn State, because these are the guys that are the face of Penn State, Zane, Nick Lee. So they have kids coming in and working with them. They've been through it. They've already, 3-time national champs, both of those guys, and have them available every day for your student athletes is a huge get. And it's a no-brainer that they went after him and got him. Nolf, I don't know if he wanted to go into coaching. I have no idea. I don't know him personally, but I think he would have been also a great coach there. But, he had other things he wanted to do, obviously, and he's going to be successful at whatever he does.
All right, I agree. Let's talk a little bit. Men's U7, or boys, I guess, U17. GT, they win the Worlds. 6 medals, couple of champs.
3 champs, right, David?
Maybe. I thought it was 2 in a finalist, but I could be wrong. But some 5th place guys scored some key team points, and it's that 25, 20, 15, 10 thing for people that don't know all the rules there. So 25 for first, 20 for second, 15 for third/4th, and 10 for 5th/6th. The obvious sentence here, GT, is the future's bright, right? And because we're also going to see the U20s next week, and that team's freaking loaded. Well, I'll give you the rundown real quick on the boys' men's freestyle side, but 6 medals at that level. It was hairy. There was a suggestion they don't go. Jaden didn't make the trip. Joe Russell went. I think Zoe was involved with coaching. But guys like Munaretto, he's now a handful of guys that have repeated at that level. I mean, pretty awesome tournament for United States, correct?
Yeah. And I think, with their success, it just kind of sets the stage for the U20 team, which is absolutely murderer's row of United States kids. And, that one's coming up here this next week.
Yes.
So that's Luke Lilladal, Blaze, Bassett, PJ Duke, Lockett, Ryder, Barr, Marisola, Rademacher, and Cuter.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I pulled up on my screen here. Yeah.
It's crazy. But with the age group category things going on right now, once again, credit to the team, and once again, it was in Amman, Jordan, which is far away from home, a lot of travel, go there, wrestle well. I think also a big shout out to Rainey. I think he was 2-time the cadet world champion for Greco.
Yeah.
So yeah, big tournament for everybody, and setting the stage for U20s.
Yeah, U17, big job. We talked a little bit about the Greco last week. U20s, GT gave you that roster. I literally had it pulled up. It's insane. 5 Penn State recruits: Luke Lilladal, PJ Duke, Zach Ryder, Josh Barr, Connor Marisola. Blaze uncommitted, Bassett uncommitted, Lockett, Oklahoma State committed. Rademacher at Oregon State, Keeter at Iowa. So if people think that the Penn State dynasty is slowing down, what's interesting about these 5 guys is none of them have actually wrestled a match yet for Penn State. So chance these guys could be really, really good. Okay, so we're 2 weeks away.
One other thing, David, it was really fun for me, just being the oldest guy in this group, obviously, but to see guys like Mako wrestle at heavyweight, because I remember when his dad wrestled at Oklahoma State and at Iowa and performed, and then you get to watch their kids out there wrestling on the world stage. It's such a treat to watch. And he's actually really good on his feet. I don't remember Dad shooting like that. Dad had a really good foot prop, but this kid can shoot and get into, I think in the finals, he had a nice, single and then crossed over into a double right into a lace, and 18 or 20 seconds, the match was over. It was really impressive.
Yeah, he's a huge recruit, and he wrestled 110 kilos over there, which is like 242, I think. And he doesn't weigh anywhere close to that. Like, he wrestled 215. He'll be a heavyweight. Okay, he'll be a heavyweight in college, and he can wrestle whatever weight he wants in Florida this year. So, and he's got a little brother who's pretty good too. It'd be interesting to see who gets his services. But that's where the recruiting really heats up. Like GT mentioned, if you're a college fan, that's why U17s and U20s are awesome, right? Like Bo Bassett, uncommitted. Blaze, uncommitted. That's like the 2 people on that team that people think, man, we get those guys, it's going to be awesome, right? Penn State looks at who they got on the team, and they're like, we're going to stay awesome. Oklahoma State looks at Ladarian Lockett and goes, we got another awesome guy coming in. So these teams are the hope for these programs, are the future. The U17s are interesting because I don't think any of those kids are at an age where they can verbal. And even if they verbaled, they haven't signed. And even if they have signed, still doesn't mean they're not going to go in the portal. So, it's a fascinating dynamic. The whole thing is different. So the non-Olympic trials are in 2 weeks in Omaha. So they are wrestling the 4 weights at each of the 3 styles, women's, men's, Greco. And they came out with the process. So we do have certain athletes sitting out. So Vito sits out at 61. Zahid sits out at 92. Kilty sits out at 65. So the entries are slowly coming in, but at 61, it's already Vito, Seth Gross, Nahshon Garrett, Dayton Fix, Marcus Blaze. 70, just names people know: Abbas, Pantaleo, Evan Henderson, Yaya, Alirez, Andonian, PJ Duke, Arrington. 79, nobody sitting: Burrows, Marsteller, Deeringer, Carr, O'Toole, Wick, LaValle. 92 is a little thin, but we have Aiello and Hidley and Machiavello. Greco's really thin. Women's freestyle, Felicity Taylor, Jakara are at 50, both at 55, 65, Jen Page, Emma Bruntel, and then going into Kilty. And right now, 72, only 2 people entered. So, I mean, the numbers will heat up, but that 61 and 79 men's brackets worth the price of admission. I don't know how much they're charging you, GT, to get into these events these days, but hopefully you can get a discount. They hook you up. They hook you up, right? Thank you.
Try to, man.
50% off. Complimentary corn dog. So yeah, those are going to be super exciting. So the other thing, which I don't have a lot of information on, but the NCAA did come out in all this everything going on. There's 2 other things. One, marijuana is no longer a problem in terms of being punishable, where for years that was terrible. And 2, unlimited transfers. Okay, so unlimited transfers is really, really fascinating, because it used to be that if you went to a 4-year and a 4-year and tried to go a third 4-year, you had to either graduate or get your associate's, your junior college degree. So you had to either go 4.424 or 4.4 graduate. So now you can go to 5 schools in 5 years. People, you need to stay on track APR graduation, which if people don't know this, if most degrees are 120 credit hours, you need to have 12 credit hours towards graduation every semester. Most kids take 15. So, for example, if you took 15 for 4 semesters, 2 years, you're actually a semester ahead. And a lot of these schools, and I'm sure like Grandview and everybody else is doing this, they'll get the kid in 3 or 6 hours of summer school. You know, then they take 15. A lot of them are taking winter classes, summer school classes, so they're way ahead. But the portal, the transfers are not going to slow down. And I think what you're going to see more of, if they do this portal thing where if you're not in the portal, you can't transfer, I think you're just going to see mass number of names in the portal, like, because it's a just in case. I mean, that would be my guess. I have no quantitative basis or qualitative basis to say that, but like, it seems logical. Seems like, well, the only way I could leave is to do this. And if I don't do it, I can't leave. I'm going to do it. And I might be perfectly happy, but what if there's a coaching change? Okay. You know, so things like that. And we'll get more into this, but I just want to say this. I'm looking at the team rankings, and this is what Flo did. And this is not a fun exercise. We respect all the guys doing it. But Iowa State is number 15 with 32 points. I will bet anybody, anything, that Iowa State scores more than 32 points without bonus at the national.
How is that possible?
I have no idea. They don't have Swiderski in the rankings. I looked. So they put Echemendia in at 57. Okay. Or 49. 49. Excuse me. 49. Excuse me. Okay. They got at 57. Chittum's not in the points. So that's part of it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. Like, I'd have to go through and literally look at every weight, but like Christian Carroll's not in here. So
that's because he's never wrestled collegiately yet, so they don't usually rank the freshmen.
Well, they got Greg Diakomahalis in here last year.
So, as just a spitballer here,
yeah,
they're returning younger Bastida.
Yes.
They're returning Echemendia.
Yes.
Swiderski.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
So four All-Americans previously that are all returning equals 15 points?
No, 32 points, 15th.
32 points for 4 guys, with Younger being the number 2 seed last year and probably going to be.
They have Younger at 6 right now. Okay. They have.
And he didn't place last year, Grant,
right.
So they do take that into account.
Echemendia, they have at 7. They don't have Swiderski because they have them both at the same weight, and they have Frost at 5.
This is why I pay zero attention to you wrestling nerds in your math in September, because none of your stuff makes any sense, and it's all projections and manure.
Completely well said. I think I preface this by I will take anybody's money. When I say 32 points, I understand bonus. I'll take 32 on the placement side of things, that they outkick their coverage on 32. That's bonkers. I mean, if they get Echemendia to 41, if they can do that, they're good. I mean, MJ Gaitan was round of 12 last year. They have Noctaburin. If they get Evan Bachman down to 84 and Carroll at 97, I mean, they got a bunch of maybes, but they got some dudes. They got 4 All-Americans. So, all right. So next week we will talk about the U20s. We will probably also have more information on the non-Olympic trials. We'll have more entry fees or entries and things like that. And whatever else breaks from Iowa City, because that's usually where the news comes from. So, and that'll be the day before I see Grant in person. And then we can talk about how much better at golf he is than me. So, but we're not worried about who's better. It's just how much better. So, all right. For Mark and Grant, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We will see you all next week.